Hi, survivors. Welcome to the channel. We're going to talk about echoism, which is the other side of narcissism. So where does this term come from? It comes from the story of Narcissus, which is also where the term narcissist comes from. So recently they coined this term echoism, and it's from the Greek myth Echo and Narcissus. And it is about this cursed by this goddess Hera. The nymph Echo was no longer able to speak for herself. She could only repeat the last words of what others said to her. So she begins to lose her sense of self along with her voice. So she hides deep in the forest until this young man enters the forest and asks, "Is anyone out there?" So Echo hears that excitedly. She repeats the same as that last word, "Here," and runs out to meet him. So she's losing her ability to interact. She also can't really share her thoughts because she's just repeating that last word. So she starts to find herself fading away. Narcissist rejects her, leaves her alone in the forest, and she continues remaining alone. Her inner spirit starts to dwindle. So just like Echo, people who struggle with echoism, they struggle to express themselves. They worry about coming across as whether it's needy or coming across as they don't have their own defined sense of self. And it's hard for them to express their feelings, so they can't really express their clear desires. So they often seem content just supporting others. So narcissists like to take from people, but people with something similar or like echoism, they find their contentment in helping others. So they are not focusing on themselves. The narcissist is the exact opposite, where everything is about the narcissist. So echoism is at the far end of the narcissism spectrum. It's not a mental disorder or illness, but it is something that can change your quality of life. So it might be something that you can either speak to a therapist or work through. So narcissism isn't always, you know, well, let me skip that. But on the other hand, you'll find people who meet the criteria for narcissistic personality disorder often come to people who are echoists. So what does this look like? So according to the psychologist named Craig Milken, back in 2015, he wrote a book, Rethinking Narcissism. And it describes within narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder, the lack of empathy. And many people often want to be noticed by other people. They believe they have certain traits that are unique to them. And a lot of people, we're out there craving love and affection. So, when it's as far as narcissism itself, it is a survival technique. There are some benefits to healthy narcissism. The narcissist with NPD, it's an unhealthy narcissism. So what does this look like? When it's healthy, you can kind of help promote your self-confidence. You start being optimistic. You strengthen your ability to build healthy relationships. But echoism, on the flip side, when you don't feel this sense of being special, it can cause a different reaction. So people that are high on the echoism scale, they might fear people praising them. They don't like it. It's uncomfortable to them. And that's because they don't feel it within themselves. So when people are telling them something against what they feel, it just doesn't match up. They will actively reject attention. Those are people who like to shy away from things. They don't have the confidence to put themselves out there. So they shy away from attention. It feels awkward to them. And they also don't want to burden people. They don't feel that they're special enough to have people go out of their way for them. So in this, they focus on meeting the needs of others. And they do this to avoid considering their own emotions. So sometimes when we get so caught up in doing things for others. We're not really focusing on what our needs are. And over time, our needs build up and it can be quite destructive. So it's something to think about. So people also with echoism, they have a hard time with boundaries. And it's very similar to this term that we use, empath. Where we're really concerned about the other person, that we overlook our things. So echoism is kind of more condensed than the broad sense of empath. An empath is not a medical term in the DSM-5. So these people do have high empathy. They don't ask very much of other people. They just give. They don't expect in return. And some of that can be healthy, give and make the world a better place. But when you're just giving to people who don't really care, if they care, they'll give back. It's just a natural thing that happens. So by not asking, by pushing people away, it causes people not to be there for you because we've pushed it away so much. So since people who tend more towards narcissism, they have that strong need to be admired. They also want to be recognized, and they can often end up in relationships with people who have echoism because we're trying to support them. That's what they want. We stroke their egos, all those kind of things. So they're getting what they need. But in reality, we might think that we need to give, but we forget about ourselves. And that's when we start feeling lost. So it usually turns unhealthy. Just providing all the attention without ever focusing on ourselves. So echoism versus codependency, where does this stand? So people will often confuse the trait with codependency, enabling behaviors. Also, they see echoism as a passive personality, but within echoism, it's more complex. It's more than just that. People who have echoism are often not really passive, especially when they're singled out for attention that they'd rather avoid. They start to put a lot of effort into encouraging others to open up and share their struggles. So they kind of redirect certain things. So they are great listeners, but they won't necessarily attempt to guide or take control of someone's actions, as seen with codependency. So when somebody's codependent, they do try to change actions, but this is a type of coping mechanism, a tool that is used when we learn what our needs are, and it's a fear of losing people. We want them to look at us as we are, but we hide who we are. So it gets really confusing. It can have strong ties to our childhood, whether it's parents, caregivers, teachers, coaches. All those things really play an impact on the outcome of our lives, how we interact with people. So parents who have narcissistic traits, they can often cause somebody to be an echoist. They can either go either way. The child could be a narcissist, or they can turn out as an echoist. So there was this one therapist who wrote Echoism, the Silence Response to Narcissism, and her name was Donna Savory. So she says that echoism is one aspect of what she says echoist narcissistic complex. So it's kind of interesting the way that she sees it. And this pattern plays out in these types of relationships that might seem comfortable, safe to those who've learned over time not to discuss their own needs and attentions. So when you're growing up in that narcissistic household, a lot of times your needs aren't met and you have to survive. So you kind of bring that into adulthood. Also, you feel like you don't have a voice because narcissistic parents will shut that down. And parents who have traits of echoism, they might discourage their children from wanting too much for themselves. They teach them to be humble because that's how they feel that they are. They don't express their feelings, so they don't expect their children to express their feelings. And you know, it's reasonable to tell your children not to be arrogant or, you know, bragging too much, but parents who criticize their children for dreaming or wanting to take pride in their own accomplishments, they actually in return might actually cause a child not to want to reach goals. And that's really sad because they could have great potential, but they just hide it. They're just uncomfortable because of the way that they were taught. It is a survival technique, just like narcissism. And it's hard once it's ingrained in you to change it. And it can really make a difference in your life for the quality of life. So, if a parent has a hard time with their own emotional regulation, you know, the child might have learned to support them through their stress and distress, and even though they're a young child, they might try to calm them down, build up their sense of self-worth, and that's exactly what we do with a narcissist. So our needs are lost, and it's just the way that we were ingrained to act because of the way our parents or caregivers taught us to. So it becomes a part of us. During the early stages of life, it's a developmental time for our brains, and it's hard to rewire it. So the child, um, you know, did everything they could to avoid being a burden. They made the parents' life as easy as they could, and to the detriment of their own needs. So overcoming it. Can we overcome echoism? How can we change it? It's like I said, it's not considered an actual personality disorder or a mental health condition. NPD is, but it can have a really profound impact on your mental health, the way you express your emotions, your ability to have and maintain healthy relationships. So it might cause loneliness, isolation, depression. These are all things that we want to avoid in our lives. We want to lead the healthiest, most fulfilling life out there. So when you don't feel special or unique, you start to detract from your sense of who you really are. You don't really have the truest sense of yourself. It prevents you from achieving your goals. You might feel like you're just not going to get the job or get the person that you want to be with. And so you don't take risks. And often you can tend to lead a life without purpose. And a lot of people feel lost without a purpose. Whatever your purpose is, to take care of your dog or, you know, mow somebody's lawn so it looks good. And, you know, that we usually have a purpose tied to our sense of being, you know, but we have to go beyond that. You know, some of us parents are like, I'm so-and-so's mother or father. And we have to remember we're more than that. We're all encompassing, not just one aspect. A lot of parents will lose themselves as they're raising their children because they're focused on the child, which is great, but you have to focus on yourself as well. Sometimes too in our relationship, we focus on the other person and we think it's focusing on the relationship, but it's focusing on the other person, not both of us, to become one. And it's focusing on one half, and it's going to tilt it. It's going to make it unstable and different. So when echoism shows up in your life, it's good to notice it, good to address it. And sometimes we can see that and we're terrified to ask people for help. We feel we're going to be a burden, so we don't ask. And we end up doing a lot of things alone. And that can cause loneliness, you know, kind of a little bit of a depression where you're like, nobody's going to help me anyways. And, you know, you don't know unless you ask. And I kind of suffer from that. I do a lot of stuff myself. And it's hard. You know, people are there to help you. And, you know, I'm willing to help other people. But for me, that is something that's awkward for me because you have over time had people not help. So, you know, You can also consider the traits others will praise of you. Maybe your loved ones constantly comment on how helpful you are or thankful for always taking the time to listen to their problems. And, you know, that's great, but you got to make sure that your needs are as being met as well. So you can look at the different patterns in the relationships if they failed. If you regularly refuse attention, kind gestures, people who care about you, you might feel confused, like why do they want to hurt me or help me? And eventually you start to pull away. And these are the people that want to genuinely be there for you. So we need to take a step back from the blame that we might have on ourselves when things turn out badly. Are we always the one to take the burden of the blame? Like, I shouldn't have asked for help. We often feel that if we express our feelings, that it might just make the other person feel worse. So we're not expressing our feelings. They're not getting to know our true selves. And this can happen a lot in narcissistic relationships because they shut it down. So we already feel like we can't express it. And that's why often people with NPD, and whether they use the term empath, but ECHOISM is a little deeper than that. It's more encompassing. They're drawn to that. And codependents, empaths, ECHOIST. So blaming yourself is just a way to avoid expressing our needs. And we have to focus on our needs, because in relationships, you take the little pieces at a time, and you focus on those things. Often when we don't express what we need, it builds up and then explodes. And sometimes too, that can lead to a breakup or an argument. And it's really hard with the narcissist to discuss things because they don't want to hear your side. But these are the people we're tend to drawn to because we want to be the caregiver. We want to be the person who saves the day, because we saved the day with our parents, and also taught not to express ourselves. We were taught to be maybe a little too humble, and, you know, not to boast. So anytime we feel pride in things that we do, we might shut that down, feeling that that's wrong. So people who are egoists might feel like, you know, it's all my fault, you know, and they don't like me anymore. As opposed to, you know, a lot of times people forgive little things. And sometimes too, you know, it's not only our fault, or it could be somebody else's fault. With the relationships with the narcissist, we use that cognitive dissonance, and we take on a little blame that sometimes we shouldn't. We apologize for things that we didn't do. Our narcissist will confuse us into believing things are our fault. And with this echoism behind us, we can often accept that. And it still feels off because deep inside we know that's not the truth. So we're living a lie. But it's good to build and strengthen the relationships that are supportive, and to explore what our true identity is, what our personal opinions of ourselves are. Are we capable? Are we wonderful? Are we worthy of somebody helping us? We got to take a deep look into ourselves, and putting energy into friendships with people who encourage us to share our feelings and needs, people who want us to express. It lets us feel like we are a unique individual, because everybody, you know, we're so into this equality, but we forget that each one of us has something special and unique about us, just little quirks or talents. And uniqueness is what is so cool about humans, because if everybody was the same, be kind of boring. And you know, over years of hiding your feelings, it might be difficult to start opening up. And, you know, it might be good to, you know, start expressing yourselves within a close-knit friendship, and then expanding it out into the rest of your life. You can keep a journal and connect with your emotions a little bit more. Maybe you can start using it to jot down certain reactions that were too overwhelming to say out loud, and you're kind of retraining your brain when you're doing this. Eventually you're going to recognize things, you're going to be able to express things. If you feel talking to a therapist may help, somebody who deals with narcissistic personality disorder can kind of understand it a little bit better. There's also NAMI, NAMI, which is a free service where you get like a support coach. I believe they have different communities. They definitely have Facebook communities. That's in the United States. But I think with Facebook, as long as you can log on or log in through a VPN, if you're in places like China, be careful on that. But they may be able to help you, and it's free of charge. So also, you know, studying about echoism, and because like I said, it is a little bit more than just codependency or just being an empath. So those therapists that deal with MPD, they can often support somebody who is dealing and healing from narcissistic abuse. And that, like I said, a lot of times we're drawn to a narcissist. So you know, a lot of times we have that CPTSD, brain fog, whole bunch of things going on. It can actually affect our health, our life span. You know, people die from broken heart syndrome. It also causes different physical ailments and depression. It's just something that isn't the way you want to live. So if you've noticed any things such as self-blame, if you have a difficulty expressing your needs, you know, do you feel anger or awkward when people try to do things for us? If you're suffering from anxiety, loneliness, depression, that's often from a narcissistic interaction. But even just in your lifetime, are you experiencing this? Are you unable to feel confident to express yourself as somebody special, somebody worthy of praise? You know, in the workforce, it's great if you can take pride in your work, if you can accept the recognition that you deserve. That's how you climb up the ladder. And, you know, confidence goes a long way. That's why the narcissist utilizes it so much, this false sense of confidence, because confidence is sexy. Confidence leads to things turning out your way a little bit more often, because if I'm presenting this without confidence, you're not going to listen to what I have to say. But if I'm, you know, depending on the confidence is how people are drawn, how people perceive us. And if you struggle with relationship conflict, it's good to get to the bottom line. So an echo is just this formless thing. If you think about it, it has no shape, no body, no needs of its own, because echo in that story would just take that last word of whatever somebody said, and she's not expressing her feelings. She's just repeating, she's echoing, just like the narcissist mirrors. There's no true sense. And you're this beautiful person on the inside, and you just got to bring that person out. So it's worthy of analyzing a little bit more on who you are, what you feel, how your relationships are, and you guys are worth it. So I hope that helps explain what echoism is. Are you an echoist? Comment below, and feel free to let me know of any topic requests. I also am doing a lot of live chats. We'd love to have you join us, and please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good day.